And now I think I'm going to hand you over to John, John Costello, who's going to talk about the communication decision tree.
I'm glad for the opportunity to share information on our project. Your program has us listed as communication decision tree, but never one to use too few words. The title I have is Person-Centered Approach to Communication and Assistive Technology, a Clinical Guide to Identifying Solutions. We are made up of a committee that's actually a spinoff from the iTech UCL app project. While many of us have clinical and research titles, I particularly liked Phil's Twitter byline that he is a father to four, husband to one, right-brained, an ALS warrior, a 2 times Rose Bowler, and a 1 time national champion. Um, Clinical practice should be based upon a foundation of feature matching and evidence-based practice. What is feature matching? It is the process of identifying the strengths, skills, and needs, both current and future, of a person who is a candidate for augmentative communication, and matching the features of available or potentially available augmentative communication tools, devices, and strategies to that person. So the challenges that we need to address. People living with MND ALS are faced with a myriad of needs and often are searching for solutions across many resources. Looking at the web, talking with people from support groups, social media, or picking up on really good marketing from a particular company or group of companies. Um, as consumers of new products, all of us are victims of not knowing what we don't know. Many clinics and clinicians around the world also are not familiar with the broad spectrum of augmentative communication and assistive tech options and could better support their patients with a guide through that feature match process. So our goal has been to put a map to clinical thinking, which is a huge job, to take clinical thinking and somehow put it down on paper so people can kind of walk through and get a guide to decision making. So we want to create a needs-based tool that may be used as a guide for people with MND ALS. We want to make this tool available to clinics and clinicians around the world so they can also use it as a decision-making and feature match guide. Because the reality is, we all know that many clinicians have not had the opportunity to become familiar with a broad spectrum of augmentative communication and assistive technology options. And then we want to create a tool or a guide that allows people with MND ALS and their clinicians and clinics to collaborate in the process of identifying the best options throughout the disease process. So this was born out of ongoing clinical and research work at the augmentative communication programs at Boston Children's, but we partnered with MND to ensure broadest representation and inclusion for all stakeholders around the world. We want to have a global perspective on needs and care. We all need to have a tool that is culturally sensitive. We need something that's sensitive to all of the variations across regions, tools that are available, and on top of that, funding sources, being sensitive to the funding options in different parts of the world. So this guide, as you see here, is intended to be used as part of a clinical feature match process in collaboration with clinical team members, people living with ALS-MND, and then that person's appointed family members, care providers, and surrogates. Imagine, if you will, having a tool where you could look at, well, what are some of the major considerations people have when trying to think about augmentative communication? There's certainly communication. There's computer use, recognizing that communication is not just speaking, it is writing and texting, etc. There's home access that one needs to have, and then there's a telephony, using telephones. So with this tool for a moment, imagine that I'm able to just click on communication, and it brings me to, so what are your concerns? Well, maybe right now I don't really have concerns, but I want to be proactive. So I'm going to say no. It's going to bring me to what some of the proactive options are. Um, am I interested in message banking? Well, if so, this will bring me to a myriad of tools and videos and tutorials and handouts and QR codes where there are demos. Um, if, on the other hand, I say I'm interested in voice banking, again, it will bring me to, and if you imagine here, because this is absolutely just a shell, but being able to click on each of these and bring you again to handouts and video demonstrations and step-by-step descriptions of how to participate in each of these processes so that one can determine what's best for them. If, on the other hand, I said, I don't know, I am somewhat concerned, and I'm somewhat concerned about the following areas. Is it my speech clarity? Well, if it's my speech clarity, maybe then I need to learn about strategies that I need to use. Maybe on top of that, I want to learn about some quick access tools. And again, this will take me to options for looking at quick access tools. Coming back here, maybe instead my concern is the energy that it takes to speak, in which case now I might want to learn about voice amplification. There is information here that describes it. There are handouts. There's a QR code. There's even a video demonstration
you how I can
that will take you through the process of understanding options for voice amplification. What if instead I said that my speech no longer meets my communication needs and I'm interested in high-tech communication systems? And in this case, maybe I want to understand speech generating devices for eye tracking control. And this again is a placeholder for what will be lots of information. Each of these columns is actually currently on the market, different eye tracking technologies, or soon to be on the market. Um, on the other hand, maybe I'm interested in tablet-based systems and different apps that may be available. Similarly, I might want to have information about specific language tools, or even how a communication device can integrate with controls. And in this case, if I'm interested in learning how I can drive with my communication device, there could be video demonstrations of that. Okay, now we've come back here. What if instead of specifically focusing on communication, I was interested in computer use? Well, this is again just a very small snippet of understanding, if it's hard to use a physical keyboard. So starting to walk through specific questions. And if I answer, well, yes, it is hard to use a keyboard. And from here, there are additional questions. Do you need to reach out to touch the keyboard? Well, I don't understand exactly what that means. So we have video demonstrations to show this is what we mean. If your answer is yes, okay, now let's look at different types of keyboard options. Is this an external keyboard that's wired or wireless? If the answer is yes here, then this will take you to additional options to consider in terms of looking at the keyboard. Or maybe someone needs information about even the existence of alternative mouse options, and from there can take this information and do further investigating and work with their clinical team to figure out what the best feature match is for that person's needs at the time. Okay, moving along back up here to the top. What about home access? Well, I'm going to click here, and right now this is going to take us to a placeholder where we've just begun to include information about smart home hubs and other ways of integrating one's augmentative communication technology with the home. And finally, smartphone. We don't even have anything linked here currently, but understanding options for being able to fully integrate one's phone and text, etc., with communication devices. This was an incredibly fast and very, very incomplete overview of options, but I want to just, in my last minute, come back here to our goals. The goal is for us to create a tool that not only reflects good clinical thinking, but really provides people with a guide to understand options that may meet their particular needs, but also a guide that allows a person living with MND ALS to be a good collaborator with their clinic, and frankly, for clinics to be good collaborators with their patients in understanding what options may be available, and from there supporting people to try, have trials with, and ultimately implement the best tools and strategies that meet their needs at every stage of need throughout the disease process. And this brings us back to our committee. The power this project brings to people with MND, their family, loved ones, clinics, and clinicians is really dependent upon the contributions, the brain power that goes to taking the structure that we have been developing for years and make sure that it represents the broad thinking and broad needs across cultures across the world. So with that, I appreciate your attention to my very fast overview, and I would welcome any questions.
Thanks, John. So I think, firstly, just to say, John is brilliant at all of this sort of stuff. So thank you so much for your time as part of this project. It's just such an immense understanding of this area. So thank you. And again, another really exciting area with such opportunity for people living with MND and ALS and health professionals. So I'll perhaps start with a question, if that's okay, John. It feels that this could be a massive opportunity. How far could this actually go? I mean, it could across all technology and all kind of requirements.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that massive is absolutely the operative word. You know, we living at a time when augmentative communication and assistive technology is changing and evolving by the day. I mean, my goodness, this morning in the past hour and a half, we've heard of a number of new innovations that ultimately will need to be included in this. So I think that it is quite large. It is dynamic. It is ongoing. This is never a project that is finished. It's a project that needs to continue to be updated and grown. And you are absolutely right that, and I alluded a bit to that in this presentation, in that recording, that in reality, one could start to look at, okay, well, I'm using my communication device, my technology, but now I want to integrate it into the 21st century understanding of what communication is. And that is really now understanding how I'm using it with home automation and with other sorts of control features and with distance communication. So, and then moving into, as I highlighted, you know, controlling my wheelchair possibly, and other really important considerations in my environment. So I do not believe that this is a start and complete project. This is a start, evolve, continue to learn, hopefully continue to have lots of contributions from people around the world, pointing out what is needed, what is missing, what's good, what needs to be expanded, and continue to have a resource that serves everybody's needs.
Totally agree. There's lots of kudos in the chat there for this piece of work. Looks good. Simple and free of cost is a must. Is one of the comments that I've just read. And much needed information. Thank you. Can't wait to see the final decision tree. So lots of excitement out there.
Neither can I.
So brilliant. Well, thanks so much, John. It just
Pleasure.
leaves me now just to pass back to Pablo, I think.